Okay, so this video is somewhat of an extension of yesterday's video. I was planning to talk about this concept when I was thinking of making the video. It's a related concept and it's one about projects and knowing sort of how to do everything you want to do, which I also made a video about that. Clearly, there's a theme happening here with the videos that I'm making. They're all related and similar in certain ways. I was going to bring it up yesterday because similarly to choosing a career, there are sort of guidelines that I personally think I'm going to follow once I start getting back into hobbies and determining just the things that I want to do in my life going forward. Just patterns. Of course, there's no hard rules, and I don't think anything that I say or even that you think to yourself should be instilled as a hard rule. There's always exceptions, and ultimately you have to go by feel. But I do have some ideas and thoughts about how to incorporate a whole load of interests into my life, and I'm going to talk about those thoughts. I have this concept that I'm playing with called projects, where let me just close out some apps here so I don't get distracted. It's almost like a way to do things without having so many things to do at once where you get confused what to do. And the other extreme is telling yourself you can do everything, so you end up doing the things that are easiest and least rewarding. Instead, if you do things in a sense of projects, there is a certain goal. Maybe it's not a goal that you have to achieve or you have to do straight away, but there's a sort of goal or a intention with doing that thing. So, for example, I'm going to talk through a number of my projects right now. One project is learning Japanese. Another one, I want to get back into Dark Souls. I'm like maybe 15% into Dark Souls 1. I want to get back into that and beat it eventually. I want to get back into jiu-jitsu after my retreat. And, I'm a white belt, so just keep advancing, getting better. As you can see, there's not a specific goal necessarily. It's more of an intention. Like, yeah, I want to go and do it. What else? I want to get into RuneScape, just play RuneScape and see where that takes me. I want to, well, budget is a limitation here, but I want to start dating. If I make more money, then I want to start dating again. These are the sorts of things where I'm talking about. There are all these different interests and spheres, you can even consider them projects or whatever, where they're kind of confined and they're different than, say, a career, or which is also a project in a way. It's just a more required one because you need funding generally if you're going to be in society. My meditation practice, I do Qigong recently, that's another project. You can also tell that some of these projects are a lot more long-term than others. Meditation, for example, I do that mostly every day, 4 to 6 times a week, 4 to 7 times a week. That's a long-term thing with no end goal. It's just something that I'm doing. Jiu-jitsu is a similar thing where it's long-term. I want to get better and get belts, but I'm not so strict and rigid about wanting to get to that goal. I'm more interested in just the process of going, sparring, learning new stuff, and enjoying myself. And then you have things like career, where in this case right now I'm playing with a number of different things. I have my day job, which is going to end no later than mid-August. I'm also working on my AI automation, like consultancy or whatever you want to call that, which, by the way, I got a client today. I'm super excited about that. And potentially going to school. It's like between that and AI automation. Maybe I do both if the circumstances align. I'd rather go all in with the AI. But anyway, so different kinds of projects here. Dopamine plays a role into this. I'm going to talk about how I structure my day to fit these sorts of things in. My day, but also my week. Because their main limitation is time. We all have 24 hours every day. It's a limited amount of time that we can only allocate certain amounts to different things. Going to jiu-jitsu, that's, an hour plus, an hour for the class, travel, showering, It's like 2 hours if you add it all up together. Job in the day, 9 to 5, that's what, 8 hours plus a lunch break for most people, sometimes more, sometimes less if you have a chill job and you have time during the day. Working on my own business on the side, that's 1 to 3 hours generally every day. Video games, so you can see these things add up. Dating, some of these things also are unpredictable. You don't really know how long you're going to be spending on dates. If you end up liking the person on the day, you can go for 3 hours. If you don't like them, it's 30 minutes. You might see people repeatedly, which is a weekly or multiple weekly thing, or you might go droughts and have like a month in between. And now you're hearing piano because my neighbor is a piano teacher, so hope you enjoy that background music. I find it a little bit annoying, but I'm just going to deal with it. And I'm going to lose my train of thought because that is loud. Anyway, I'll have to work with it. You can see there's a limited amount of time we have. So how can you even do all these things? One thing is, like I mentioned in yesterday's video, a lot of these projects aren't permanent. For instance, Dark Souls, which is I want to play Dark Souls and probably just play to beat it. You can hear the singing maybe. Okay, I'll just keep talking. My goal, I'm always open to goals changing, but I want to play the game and enjoy it and explore it and then ultimately beat the game. And then, of course, Dark Souls 2. Those are finite things. Once the game is beat, once I've explored whatever I want to explore, get the gear that I want to get, fight the bosses that I want to fight, it's done. That project is done. So you have projects like that where it's like a limited commitment and you can kind of cycle those. Books are another example of this, unless your main intention is like a daily reading habit instead of just finishing books, like a specific book. I want to finish this book. For me, it's a bit of both. I like to do daily reading, but I also want to read specific books, and I have specific books like in a sort of sequence where I know, okay, I'm reading this and then that. I haven't been reading the past 2 months on this retreat, but before that I was reading Harry Potter and I want to finish the series. That's like a mini project. You can see that as a project. But it's also a fixed project where I know, okay, after I read this book, I'm going to try reading this book. And maybe I don't want to read anymore. I can switch books. Another thing is you don't have to stick with these things until they're done, especially if it's not an obligation. Like playing Dark Souls is not an obligation. So if I get frustrated or just don't want to play anymore for some reason, want to take a break. I mean, I started playing Dark Souls 1 in 2024 and I still, I'm only 15% through. So I've taken a break, but I want to come back to it and try and beat it and develop my character. You can always stop. There's no, let me turn this off. Sorry, I got a notification on my phone. It's distracting. You can always switch projects, so you can almost have like a bucket of projects within the same sphere. So for me, video games tends to be the same project where I might have multiple games I want to play. There's also different kinds of games. A game like RuneScape, which my intention is like to explore and have fun, is different from Dark Souls. Dark Souls is a more grindy, like effort. I want to beat this game. Where RuneScape is like, I want to just play and see where things go. It's a whole world to explore, bosses to fight, and communities to join. So maybe if I'm tired of Dark Souls, like I can do both of those at once depending on how I feel like. Or there's a game like Skull the Hero Slayer, which is also a game where I want to beat it. So if I get tired of Dark Souls, I can play, sorry, the singing is really distracting me. I don't know if you can hear that. It's hilarious. Anyway, I think the point, hopefully I'm getting the point across. It's not like a logical system you have to follow, but let's say, for example, what I'm thinking right now is because during the week, I know I want to focus on the jiu-jitsu because I want to have a social hobby, and that also takes place of my cardio. So that kills two birds with one stone. Again, there's like a cardio sphere, which is a thing that I want to have in my life. I could do running, I could go to the gym and like row, or I can do jiu-jitsu, which also gets a, consistent social, in-person social activity sphere for me. So it hits the cardio sphere, it hits the social sphere, and it hits the skill-based improvement sphere, right? So in my mind, that fulfills all those requirements. But during the week, I'm not going to have time for gaming because I also want to read and play guitar. So there's not much time for gaming during the week. So in my mind, how I'm organizing that is on the weekends, especially like later in the day on Saturday and Sunday, as much as I want to, which is, I'm not going to play the whole day probably, but I could if I wanted to. That's like a video game day where I can work towards completing my Dark Souls project or towards building up my RuneScape character. So you can see how I'm kind of piecing things together. It's not random. There's allocated times. I watched a video randomly the other day, or I skimmed through. I didn't watch the whole thing, but this guy was talking about all the hobbies he has. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He reads a ton of books. He's learning the piano, spends time with his kids. I think he has a bunch of other hobbies he mentioned. How does he do it all? He just has specific time slots for each of these things. I don't like to be that specific. I'm more of like a broadly general speaking guy, having guidelines where like, yeah, I know on the weekends I probably want to play video games, but I could also go camping. And of course, doing both at the same time is not easy unless you bring a handheld. Again, there's ways to mix things together as long as that works for you, right? So just some ideas. I want to mention, I think Lauren, who I was calling her in yesterday's video, Julie. Her channel name is LRN Julie, but her name is Lauren. There was something she said in the video that I was talking about yesterday. She said, if there's a will, there's a way. So if you really want to get something done, you'll figure it out. And in her case, she's been really busy with school. And the example she made was she wanted to still keep doing an art hobby. So she picked sewing because sewing is something that doesn't take much mind intention, so she can do it during class. And she sews things on her backpack, which is pretty cool. So in that way, you can combine things like BJJ fills a requirement sphere, which I haven't even talked about spheres yet, what that means, like spheres. It fits well, I might as well just explain that now. The concept of spheres is like, what kind of areas of my life do I want to have filled out? I want to keep my body in shape and healthy. I want to keep my mind aligned. That's like a meditation practice. I want to earn income, ideally also a comfortable amount that can scale. That's business or career, and even investment. I want to save money. I want to donate money. That's all like similar spheres. There's not like any hard rules here. Again, it's not like there's a universal being which is putting these rules onto you. It's just think of these as frameworks which could help you understand how to organize everything you want to do. I have a desire to be social in person. In person specifically, not just social, because I have in the past been very social online playing video games, and there's definitely a difference, at least for me. Again, it's really up to you. There's no rules. But for me, I've noticed there's a desire to expand into in-person social life. So jiu-jitsu fits that role. There's cardio that I want to fill out. Jiu-jitsu fills that role. All these sorts of things. Now, there are some that I'm having a hard time classifying. For instance, the skill-based things. I really enjoy learning guitar, but jiu-jitsu also, right? So jiu-jitsu fills that role, but jiu-jitsu also fills the role of cardio and social. So it's like almost like thinned out a little bit. So I have space for skill-based stuff, which is guitar, and also, I'm learning language, Japanese, sometimes Hebrew. I switch, every half a year or so. I seem to switch between the two. Every half a year to a year. I've been on Japanese now for like 9 months, I think. And there's ways to also incorporate that. For example, I could start watching anime without subtitles. That could help me work to understand the Japanese language better. So we have entertainment of some kind, the sphere of entertainment that's filled out by anime, but also learning a skill, Japanese. They work in tandem. So just think of it that way, where you can have certain hobbies that fulfill multiple needs, like spheres that are interesting, that are of interest to you. along that line, I think one of the important things to understand is I would view it more like what are the specific needs, not like the specific hobbies you have. For instance, when you're looking for a hobby, you're most likely going to see what kind of hobbies are available, what kind of hobbies fulfill specific desires or general desires. Just like Lauren said in her video, embroidery and sewing works because it fits other needs. It fits her desire to be artistic with minimal time that she has and with minimal mental involvement because it's a habitual, like flowy thing that she can do in class while listening to a lecture. So I look at it that way. If there are certain things which seem out of reach, find alternatives. It's just like a career. There's almost like spheres of how they can fit together, and you just find the thing that fits. Sometimes there's a very specific desire, like, yeah, I want to beat Dark Souls. In my case, I will be having time to do that though. So it's like there's an opening for that, and in that case, that works. But there's no reason to try and force a hobby that's not available to you at the moment. You can build up to it or do other things in the meantime. For instance, if the only game I was allowed to play was Marvel Rivals, then I would try and make that something that I desire. On that note too, there's I think one of the benefits of projects is it forces you to have some amount of effort or intention when approaching hobbies that might otherwise drain your attention and drain your dopamine stores. Just playing Marvel Rivals with no other intention, I tend to find that mushes my mind. That makes me feel weak and unmotivated to work and to produce. But if I had a goal, for example, to reach a certain rank or to get a certain Lord icon, I think that would help a little bit. A game like Marvel Rivals is still pretty basic compared to Dark Souls. Dark Souls is there's a lot of emotional investment. There's frustration involved. The story is rich, deep story. There's a really strong skill. There's like this reinforced feedback of putting in effort, even throughout multiple failures of dying. And my camera is bugging out right now. Anyway, sorry about that. That might have been freaky. There's a reinforced cycle of putting in effort, failing, but eventually winning and getting rewarded a ton for it. Or even just a little bit, like enough reward to make you want more reward afterwards and chase the reward. Marvel Rivals is, it's a much shorter pace of reward feedback cycles, but you can make that better by extending that artificially by going for a goal like the next rank or a Lord icon, which takes 20 hours generally to get, if I remember correctly. Instead of just playing because you want to, let off steam, you let off steam by switching spheres and investing attention into that. That allows your mind to almost like reset. I think many people have noticed, my camera is, it's been broken ever since I reconnected it. I'm not sure why. Once I make more money, I'll buy a dedicated camera. But anyway, that out of the way, I think I've heard many times for people who are very heavy in like mental work, it's recommended to do a physical activity like martial arts or a workout because you're after a long day at work, you might think, I want a break. But what really needs a break is your mind, the thinking mind. Now you have your physical body. If you invest energy and intention into that, your mind is literally getting a break because your sphere of action is physical instead of mental. That really helps your mind. Instead of, I want to take a break, let me sit on the couch and watch TV. That completely feeds your mind with more stuff to process, and it's just not a break. It might seem like a break, but it's because you don't want to put in more effort, but it's not a break. It's going to leave you feeling worse afterwards, not better. A workout after work, unless you're really depleted, of course there's always exceptions, but unless you're super depleted, a workout is likely going to make you feel better. At least a well-crafted workout, not a crazy workout. That's another thing I think is really valuable for doing different projects within different spheres is it gives you a balanced life. Different people have a different aptitude for balance. Some people can really go all in on something and not get burnt out or get frustrated very easily, and they just want to do that one thing. I think that's rare. I think most people would benefit from a semblance of balance. In my case, a recent example has been with the AI automation company I've been trying to build. The first, I want to say 2 to 3 weeks, I was quite excited just with the idea of making money and getting clients. It's that shiny object syndrome. And then very quickly, all of a sudden, it kind of dipped, and there was a drop in motivation when I wasn't getting results quickly. And of course, I guess I tried to keep pushing harder and just kept pushing and kept pushing. And over time, I just became drained and really not happy with it. And there were periods of time where I wanted to quit. I think I was considering quitting 10 to 15 times at different intervals. There were 2 or 3 times where I, in my mind, decided I'm done. I'm quitting. But for some reason I came back. And I remember there have been many times where I felt similarly in the past. And the one lesson I've taken from those times is instead of quitting, just slow down, do less. Any amount of momentum is better than no momentum. To help with that, there's other things that you can do instead of going all in. Going all in is a relative term. It doesn't mean putting all your time into something. It means doing whatever is necessary, which might mean backing off. In this case, the right move was to back off, do less, not to stop momentum, but I applied to less jobs. I just generally did less. I didn't really work in the evenings anymore. I only worked before my main job. I introduced more time in my day to do other things. And now I'm at a point where I feel pretty comfortable at the pace that I'm going, and I just got a client. So that boosts my motivation. Maybe that increases my workload, my capacity for workload, but do it gently. Again, I was making YouTube videos for AI as well, and that was too much for me. So I stopped doing those, but I kept with the whole thing, which was the AI business. And I feel great now, and I'm still going, 60 plus days in at this point, and just got a client today, and I might get another one soon. We'll see about that. Quite a bit, 22 minutes. I was going to say more, I think, but I don't really have much in mind right now. Things change, and yeah, stacking your days, I think I was going to talk about that, but maybe I didn't. The important generality to follow with stacking your day is that it's best to have things that generate the most dopamine, that are most effortful. The things that are the most effortful generally should be at the top of your day, and slowly as the day goes on, trickled into less effortful, less effortful, less effortful. The reason why, and I think this is the case for most people, some people do really well at the end of the day. They're more creative, more motivated. But I think for most people, you start with the most effortful thing and you eventually least effortful at the end. The reason why is because when you do something that activates dopamine with minimal effort, you're wiring yourself to want easy access to dopamine, which, let's just say, for example, you scroll TikTok before work in the morning. What's easier to do, scrolling TikTok or going to work? Scrolling TikTok is easier. It's an instant feedback loop for dopamine. If you do that in the morning, it makes it way harder to start your work and to focus and to actually get things done. So instead, get things done first. And you can even stack it within the workday. Work isn't just work. There's work that's easier and work that's harder. Work that's more mentally intensive or physically intensive, and work that's less. So you start with the most intensive work at the top. Usually it's going to be mentally, and slowly trickle down. So maybe deep work in the morning, middle of the day, maybe you do calls or fulfillment. End of the workday, you do administrative work, which is usually just brain dead work. Then you do, you know, in my case, it's meditation, which you can also do before work. That's kind of a yeah. That's not so. That's more of an output than it is an input where you take in information. So that could be at any time generally. Same with a workout. You usually just listen to music or a podcast, which is a form of input, but the workout itself is an output. That's another thing, inputs versus outputs. When you're working, generally there are inputs involved for most jobs, especially those that you sit on a desk and work on a computer. There's other inputs as well. Playing video games is a mix of input and output. A game like Dark Souls leans towards output, I want to say, leans towards effort. A game like Candy Crush leans towards input. Input, you could say that as sort of a dopamine spiker. It's like eating a ton of sugar, your dopamine's going to spike. You're inputting stuff. If you watch TikTok, your dopamine's going to spike. If you play Dark Souls and you keep dying to the same boss, your dopamine is going to plummet. Not plummet, but you're not going to get the dopamine reward you're wanting until you beat the boss. So there's a strong effort curve. That's like in terms of stacking your day with projects. You start with projects that are more effortful, or at the very least more necessary. Work. The benefit about work is that it fits both of those requirements. It's necessary to make money, and it's the most effortful. So you kill two birds with one stone. Do that first. Of course, most people who are employees have to work at 9, but don't do anything crazy before that. Don't scroll TikTok. You can. I'm not giving you rules, but just notice if you do that. Maybe try not doing that for a week or 2 weeks and see the difference. Move TikTok to the end of your day. Same goes for breaks. This is not a productivity video. It's more of it is in the productivity realm. It's more about projects and doing a bunch of things that you want to do. I'm just trying to think if there's anything more. Like I have other long-term projects like buying certain cars, for instance, working on my apartment, optimizing it like I was talking about in my apartment tour video. What else? Traveling to different countries are also like longer term projects. And of course, some of these things you can do while doing everything else. I can travel to another country while also learning a language, while also still doing some form of cardio or workout and meditating it. The pieces can fit together, and that's how you kind of do multiple things at once. Yeah, I think that's essentially all I wanted to cover. Just thinking about things in terms of projects. Ultimately, there is not really a project. Everything is connected in the project of your life, you could say. I remember many years ago, I think 4 years ago, on an online forum, I had made a post about an insight I had where I mentioned if you're getting frustrated being in one box, which means like one sphere, one project, make more boxes, which I think is a neat insight. But then my friend responded and he said, nah, bro, destroy all the boxes, which basically means don't categorize things as being separate. I'm still working to understand that insight. There's times where it clicks for me. Other times it's I get confused and I inaccurately represent that as just do whatever you want. Don't view the world as like as different boxes, different things as different boxes. It doesn't mean to just do whatever you want, because then you're going to default to high dopamine activities and you're going to feel like shit. What it means is integrate your life in a way that allows you to do whatever you want to do, and don't separate things. Don't think because you're doing X, you can't do Y. Just figure out how to implement it. That's how I kind of see it. Because the real box is your life, and your life is not even a box. You can blow that box open too. Yeah. This video feels complete. There may be more that I want to say, but I think that's good enough. Thanks for watching.